The war on Christmas, just like many other things, was a conspiracy theory until just a minute ago. Marty up north, welcome back. We're doing this. I didn't even know about this story. We're covering so many different stories here in Canada. And
Before we get deep into the story, Merry Christmas, not Happy
yeah,
Holidays.
Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas. Yeah, yeah. No, I think we're going to have a good discussion this week. We're going to talk more economics and and a few things like that. But let's start it off with this one. Yeah, the Human Rights Commission of Canada. You'd think Canada would have a good track record with human rights. We do, and we have this thing called the Human Rights Commission. But the Human Rights Commission just published a report. It's their annual report, and then they're going over the top, describing Christmas as discriminatory. Again, it's in line with the Girl Scouts or the Girl Guides, not the
Girl
Girl
guys,
Scouts.
yeah.
Girl Guides, Girl Scouts. A couple of weeks ago, choosing not to participate in upcoming Christmas parades. Remember we talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 weeks ago during the Memorial Day, well, we call it Remembrance Day here. Americans call it Memorial Day, but on November 11th, when we're remembering, veterans and soldiers. Anyways, the Canadian forces were advised, priests and dignitaries in the Canadian forces were advised that during the ceremonies, not to talk about God, not to talk about Jesus. So again, it's kind of like that. What do you call it? Not the gentrification, but I mean, eliminating religion and worship from society is going on, right? But I'm talking a lot. I want to go back to one thing. So it's upsetting. I saw people upset that the Human Rights Commission of Canada was using Christmas as, describing it as a discriminatory thing. But I said, hey, I reminded people a mere 2 years ago, the Canadian Human Rights Museum, during the COVID mandates, imposed the mandates and discriminated and would not allow unvaccinated Canadians to visit the museum. And I was critical of them when that happened. And I'm reminding people of that, like the Human Rights Tribunal Association should have stood up when the government was speaking, or imposing the mandates, but they never did. They stayed quiet. In fact, they went along with the mandates. So this whole, it's unfortunate that the Human Rights Commission is doing this, but I think they've already lost. To me, they had lost credibility a long time ago.
Yeah, well, and the tribunals lost credibility when they went after comedians for just saying words at a comedy show. People getting upset with that and taking them all the way to the Human Rights Tribunal. And this is Canada now. This is the country that we live in. But it was only a few years ago that it was liberals, people on the left saying, "Oh, the war on Christmas, boo-hoo! Nobody's coming for your Christmas. Nobody's coming for it." Well, here we are. They're actually coming for Christmas.
But they don't want to come for Christmas too hard, because Christmas is very lucrative for businesses and everything else. So, they don't want to cancel Christmas, but they want to rebrand it and then just, merry consumer, excessive consumerism day. I mean, no, I'm not doing that. Merry Christmas, and I'm going to buy presents. And we're after November 11th, so it's fair enough to put up the lights. Actually, which reminds me of another. I don't know why this reminds me of this, but another thing that happened. I'm rambling. Sorry, folks. A lot of thoughts going through my head right now. You're talking about canceling. Now, the left loves to cancel us for sure. And I'm not a big fan of canceling, but once in a while there is somebody who gets canceled, and I applaud it. And somebody like that was there was a lady here in Alberta at the University of Alberta who put her name. She was the director of the University of Alberta Sexual Violence Center or whatever, and then she put her name to an open letter condemning condemning Jews and not condemning Hamas, and then somehow or other claiming that the atrocities. Anyways, she got canceled. So she put her name. She was associated with the University of Alberta. She's a director of a sexual offense center of some sort, and she got canceled. The university actually came out and said we're distancing ourselves from her. So
She came out against Jews, not like a state of Israel or something like that.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those ugly things, and I'm just happy that it's ugly, and I'm just happy once in a while when somebody's really ugly. Yes, they should be canceled. Am I going to cancel Subway for promoting something that I'm not happy about? No, I don't want to be canceled. I don't want to cancel. I don't want to be canceled. But when you're bordering on hate speech, yeah, you need to be canceled. So,
well,
how do we get on this topic?
I don't know. We were talking about canceling Christmas, but now the state isn't against having religion at all. In fact, I just reported on this the other day. I was talking about the new state religion that we have here in Canada, and that would be the new climate cult. This is what's important for the state today. I mean, you can't cancel the climate cult. We can't go after that. And I purposefully put it in this tone, and I put obviously the little religious collar on Guibo there, because what he's doing is in fact of a religious fervor. If you're telling people that you're not allowed to question something, like they actually say, like, people who question the science. What is that term? Like how do you even square that circle? You can't question science. Isn't that what science is questioning reality?
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's the scientific principle, right? Anybody who says science is settled doesn't understand science, because science is never settled. Actually, it's like the old joke that if you say you understand quantum physics, you don't actually understand quantum physics, because, anyways,
no, it's a thing.
Yeah. No. Science is always about. Nothing's ever settled. I mean, there's been great examples throughout history of things that we thought were settled, and they can be settled for a long time, settled enough to even be defined as a law in terms of scientific terms, and then can be busted, right? I mean, science thought that, let's talk about, for instance, the atom, right? I mean, earth, wind, and fire were the elements, and then we got fancier and fancier. And then even when I grew up going to school, it was atoms, and it was neutrons, and it was electrons. That's it. There was three. Now, if I went back to school, I'd be like, holy smokes, you guys have like found more. Yeah, there's neutrinos, and there's whatever, all sorts of, and then who knows, somebody could find something else. I mean, even things as hard to challenge as, let's say, the speed of light is a constant. Yeah, it's the current accepted theory, but nobody would ever say it's settled and they cannot change. All it takes is one small experiment. Somebody does something, and then boom, it's out the door. So yeah, when Guilbeault uses terms like, the terms they like to use is you're a denier, or you're a lay person, or trust us, don't question. Those are tactics used throughout history by religions and by crazy dictators. Well, crazy dictators go farther.
Even in science, they've used the appeal to authority or consensus debates before to try to squash theories that they didn't like. So, for example, when Einstein wrote his theory of relativity, there was a group of 100 scientists that all signed a paper that said I think it was titled 100 scientists that are against the theory of relativity by Albert Einstein. Well, and it holds no water, because he actually said all it would take was one of them to prove me wrong, and then it's all over, right?
Actually, a current battle that's going on that's really fascinating is in the world of archaeology, which is a science, right? And there are definitely archaeologists and historians who like to call, who refer to modern history, or history simply as the time from the Egyptians basically onwards, so about 4,000 years ago. And now there's like all sorts of evidence, right? They're finding these ruins in all sorts of places around the world that is challenging that narrative, and people saying that anatomically modern humans were forming civilizations like 12,000 years ago, and some people say no, that's not possible. Well, I don't know, man. I've seen the digs in Turkey and places like that. Anyways, it's an example. Yeah, it's an example where, of course, if you're the guy who says the Egyptians were the first civilizations, you're going to hang on to that theory for a long, long time, and you're not willingly going to give it up.
So, it's unfortunate that that's how it happens to be.
Yeah.
Tenure
and so,
is how things progress in science. Every
yeah.
time there's a group of old guys retiring, that's when the new stuff gets brought to the forefront. That tends to be
Yeah,
the
no,
way it is.
Gilboa's not going away. We've talked about him before. Again, this week, he made the news here in Alberta because he got struck down. I mean, the plastic straw ban got overturned by the Supreme Court. Earlier, it was Bill C-69, two bills that impact Alberta very particularly. It affects all the other provinces, but and rather than accept that his proposed legislation was unconstitutional, he immediately said, "Well, we're just going to challenge it."
That's
I don't
right.
even think he's going to. He's just going to shove it down our throat. And then Danielle had, said something in a press conference. But is that him here talking? Yeah, that's him.
This is him being asked if he was gonna challenge it, and he says, "Of course we're gonna challenge it," even though it was ruled that it was unreasonable and unconstitutional. Now the plastics ban, which he gets into this talk on here. And he ended up grabbing the clip and putting some soft music to it where he's giving this appeal to, people's health and safety and all this stuff about microplastics. And this is something I reported on. Well, microplastics are an issue, we're saying now, about health. And he says, it's not like we're banning all plastics. And that's right, because there's one that he hasn't banned, and that's masks. Masks are actually probably the biggest contributor to microplastics out in the ecology, but also into people's health. You're putting it right on your face. I mean, if there's any tears or anything, I mean, it's fibers that are put together in a press, woven together to make these masks out of plastics.
Oh, I don't even want to think what people are breathing in when they got a mask on their face all day long. Like especially a plastic semi-synthetic one. No thanks.
Well, and I mean, it could breed all kinds of bacteria and stuff.
Those aren't the only places where actually I think another place where there's a lot of microplastics is in products like soaps and shampoos and things like that. That's one of the other claims, that these microplastics are ended up in the oceans around the world. But I mean, Are straws the problem? No, I don't think straws are the problem. It's just another example of. I don't know why he picked on straws. I really don't. I mean, was he just trying to get a quick victory? I think so, and then he got defeated on that. So,
Well, I like what you pointed out on Twitter here, and this was the difference between what's happening in Asia versus our own country here in our waterways. Because the big thing is ocean plastics, waterway plastics. This is a picture from Asia. One of these pictures is from Asia. The other is most polluted river in Canada that happens to be in the province of Quebec, home of Minister Guilbeault. Canada's problem is not straws. I mean, it's pretty obvious by this image right here.
Yeah, and again, the picture on the right is the St. Lawrence River, and it is one of the most polluted rivers in Canada. Of course, it goes through the industrial heartland, but the pollution's not obviously totally apparent on the surface. It is polluted. Are we going to address that one? It's been addressed. Could it be addressed further? Yeah, but does banning straws in Canada help the St. Lawrence or anything for that matter? No, it's just again, it's the typical. I hate to say it, and we're repeating ourselves, but it is the typical liberal thing. Their definition of progress is going from plastic straws wrapped in paper to paper straws wrapped in plastic. I mean, we got that's what they do. Hey, can we keep talking about liberal progress? I mean, did you see the fall economic update that they gave yesterday?
I got this image here. I think I got this from your Twitter. This is the inflation up, taxes up, debt up, woo, rent up, everything's up. We're on the up winning. And up, hey? Yeah, winning. Yeah. That's Canada for you. This is where we're at right now, and it's largely due to the economic policies of Justin Trudeau and his Liberal party. This is where we're going. When you have this kind of fiscal policy, you can't borrow your way to success. I mean, try that in your own personal life. This is what I've always argued against. The John Maynard Keynes theory of economics. Without getting too deep into economics, there's many different schools of thought, and some people think, there's the one school, John Maynard Keynes school, that thinks that, you can do all this deficit spending, you can do all of this stuff. The broken window fallacy is one of the ones they love. This is you break a window and it creates economic activity, and it's a net positive for everybody out there, a broken window. Whereas most other economic schools of thought would say, no, that's a net zero. You're creating activity, but you're not creating anything new, and nobody benefits from it. It's just creating activity.
The economic report tabled by the Liberals yesterday was full of those examples. I mean, one example was, the consumer price index came out yesterday, and there's a small drop, and they were happy to brag about that. So in the report, they show different components of the basket of goods, and one of the components they show is childcare. So then they go on to say, hey, look, if you measured inflation that was contributed by childcare went down because we've addressed childcare, and childcare, instead of being $20 per day for Canadians, is now $5 a day. Well, no, there's no reduction in the cost of childcare. You transferred it. So what they didn't show is on their balance sheet, they borrowed $8 billion to give that discount to Canadians. So yeah, on paper,
still got to pay
inflation. Yeah, you still got to pay, but on paper, inflation comes down slightly because the cost of childcare for the individual, the way it's measured, went down. But as a society, the cost of childcare didn't come down. They didn't do anything to address it, to make childcare more affordable. They didn't improve anything in the delivery. They just borrowed money.
Well, the only thing in the delivery I thought was that Chrystia Freeland, in her delivery of her speech, I thought she was in childcare at the time, because the way she spoke to.
Please don't play that speech. I know you want to play it. Maybe play it for your fans. I'm going to plug my ears before you play it.
Gotta play this because it's just ridiculous. I can't believe that someone who's supposed to be in our highest office actually speaks to the Canadian.
She's our deputy prime minister. She's our minister of finance and the deputy prime minister. She is officially the second in command in government. And in this clip, she's addressing the Speaker of the House, which indirectly means she's addressing all of us Canadians. So listen to how she talks to people.
Building a Canada that delivers on the promise of the greatest country in the world.
And the seals get up and clap.
It goes on.
That work will be our government's work for these next 2 years and beyond. Canada is not and never has been broken.
Okay, is she the next William Shatner? Like, what is that? Who does it? Who delivers a speech like that? It's getting worse and worse every time she does a public speak. Is it on purpose? Is it supposed to come across as condescending? Or?
I think you can end it and let people watch it, because she just goes on to nothing but platitudes. Now, what's hilarious is the internet's forever, right? Mm-hmm. And so she says Canada was never broken. Well, it took people minutes to find videos by Justin Trudeau going back to 2014-15, where he's walking around Parliament Hill with a camera saying, this building is broken, Canada's broken, and I'm going to fix it. So, and has he fixed it? No. I mean, they
broke it further.
He has. I mean, this week they had the. Where to start? I mean, let me summarize for your viewers what was in the economic update, right? So the economic update is supposed to tell us how the state of the nation is doing, and basically all they did in there is they looked at factors like our debt to GDP ratio and things like that, and said we're still fine. Which is, and if I point all these things, when I point them out, people go, oh my God, then it becomes obvious. But they don't talk about the debt. They don't talk about the debt. They talk about the debt to GDP ratio, and they'll put a graph. They don't talk about deficits. They'll just say our deficit to our whatever. They never talk about those things. They never address the root causes of high inflation. And, they never talked about curbing immigration or anything like that. They talked about building more houses. It's in the future. But anyways, I'll summarize the whole plan. They summarized the whole plan by announcing that going forward, Canadians who seek counseling won't have to pay the GST on their counseling bill. Like that's literally in the plan.
Wow.
That's how shallow and ridiculous this plan is.
How generous of them.
Yeah.
What?
5%.
Are you serious?
And they don't care anyways, because most Canadians are going to get that, or would get it as a benefit from provided by their employer or something like that. So it's a nice shallow promise that they'll never have to. That whole economic.
So this reminds me of something that I reported on earlier this week. And I just pulled up the website, and this is betterdwelling.com, and they say Canada invests $444 million with a company that says millennials don't want a home. Now, going into this, it says Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland announced that $1.2 billion worth of investments will be to build rentals in Toronto. It turns out that over a third of these funds are going into one project on 373 Front Street East, which are rentals that were planned years ago. So this is going into a company that already made the initial investment, was going to build it anyway, and the government's coming in and basically bailing them out of an investment that they probably, I don't know, they would have had to get venture capital from somewhere else. Not only this, it's a company called Tricon Capital that was on 60 Minutes because they've been buying up properties all over the Sunbelt in the US. And they're known as one of the biggest slumlords in America right now, a Canadian company from Toronto.
Yeah. So again, it's what are you uncovering here, or what are they uncovering? Liberals are recycling old promises. That's one thing. And even when they're recycling old promises, it's old corruption and old nepotism. I mean, these are outfits that are benefiting from this liberal mismanagement. Somebody's going to get rich over this. It's not going to solve the problem. It just goes on and on and on. Yeah, it's not
even delivering new results. We're talking about paying into investments that were made in the free market and just topping them off with taxpayer dollars. We're talking about a company that's sponsored by like Vanguard and has investments from these big conglomerates.
I don't know what to say. Yeah, it's
you just gotta laugh, I guess. I mean, that's my
well, you gotta
mechanism.
laugh, but let's talk. I mean, let's talk about all the other shit that happened this week, right? I mean, the liberals buried in. They didn't even talk about it in there. They did talk in the update. They talked a little bit about green energy. Again, Guilbeault and all those guys, they're promising green energy, green this, green that. We're going to build battery plants. So that's our contribution apparently to the world. We're not going to build cars or solar panels. We're just going to build the batteries. I'm not even sure why. But anyways, we just found out this week that one of the companies that got the contract to build a big battery plant is a Korean company, and they're going to build a battery plant using Korean workers. So they're going to bring foreign workers to Canada, like 1,500 of them. And then the minister in charge of that, what's his name? The French guy. Anyways, he was on camera in the scrum, and he looked like a deer in the headlight. Like it was all news to him. I'm like, I know it was news to him because he just signs the paperwork and what is that guy's name? But anyways, yeah, we're spending billions of dollars to build a battery plant in this country that will be built by foreign workers. That plant will never be finished, and by the time it's finished, anyways, those batteries will be old technology, and this
is exactly why I don't agree with the government coming in and picking winners and losers in the economy. I mean, it's just, if you want to be innovative and you want to be a country that's inviting and on top of things and at the forefront of technology, create the environment where the companies can do the best within your framework. Like, just make the framework for them. Say, have really, really easy regulatory bodies where they can cut through all the red tape, get their factory in there and start working. Hire Canadians.
Well, then
have Canadians that are educated enough to get into the entry-level position so that they can be trained within the corporation and then have these jobs. It just makes more sense.
And now you're reminding me of two really ugly things that were in that economic plan. And I forget them because, in the sense, I always, like I said a few weeks ago, I'm hoping that the government is so incompetent that they can't implement what they say they will. So sometimes I blow these things off. But two things that were in there, they did mention price control. So it came up again. So, you know, the economic statement mentions that inflation is high because of housing costs. They don't say why. I mean, housing costs are high because you're not building houses. You've got too many restrictions, not enough materials, and you're letting in too many immigrants, let's say. But they don't address the root cause. And then they're talking about food inflation. And again, food inflation, they're not addressing carbon tax or any of those things that are causing, or the attack on farmers or anything that's causing food inflation.
And more people in the country bidding up the prices. And more people
in the country. But what did they mention in there? Price control. So there's a whole chapter, there's a whole 3 pages in the report on price control. So yeah, I agree with you. I mean, if the government of Canada imposes price control on Walmart and Loblaws and Save On Foods, some of those companies are just going to walk away. That's the first measure that's in there. I hope it'll never happen. I don't think it can. The government's not good enough to do that. And the other one is, yeah, they want to temporarily put measures on Airbnb and Vivo and all those things.
Oh, so they want to thing.
Yeah, they want to make it hard for people to do, what do they call it, short-term rentals instead of long-term rentals. So again, don't cancel short-term rentals. Encourage long-term rentals somehow. You know, actually, I don't understand that. Well, I guess a short-term rental makes more money than a long-term. I mean, me, if I was a landlord, which I used to be, I'd always be happier renting, you know, to a guy for 2-3 years versus short-term rentals. But I guess short-term rentals are so lucrative. But anyways,
well, they're lucrative.
Interfering. Yeah.
My argument in British Columbia with this whole thing was they did it the wrong way. They wanted to do it for the win, right? They get a political win if they do some big thing to take out the greedy landowners, right? This is a thing that they do. And it doesn't matter if they have to infringe on people's rights to do that. That's just a liberal thing or an NDP thing. That's a leftist thing. Infringe on people's rights. Yeah. No problem. That's their MO. But in the process here, what could they have done to actually make this better? Well, Airbnbs and stuff don't have to live under the regulatory bodies that like hotels live under. So there's no inspections. There's none of that stuff that falls under Airbnbs because it's just a private one little unit kind of thing. And then it all falls under the Airbnb, whatever terms of service contract there is. They could come in and say, well, no, we're going to regulate you like we do all the other hospitality industries. And then, you know, that'll bid the prices up. There'll be a bunch more expenses. And then people start looking at it like, oh, I could do an Airbnb, but I could do this hotel and it's about the same price, that kind of thing, right? Or reduce the regulation on the hotel industry so that they're more competitive compared to the other. So this is my libertarian side of me that goes this direction, right? So
right. Because you were losing me for a bit, but then you got me right back. Yes. It's either you make the playing field even. You and I would prefer no regulations.
Absolutely.
But the way this is happening is they would they're suggesting more regulations for everybody. And
no. They're not saying more regulations. They're saying different specific regulations for Airbnb than the other.
Yeah.
Still making an unfair playing field, but it's just arbitrary and useless. And this is what they're doing. And they're infringing on people's rights in the process.
I hear you. Don't go after Airbnb. Like you said, take away some of the regulations around building condos, around building hotels, and make it easier for other people to build other things, and then solve the problem that way. Yeah, that's how I always employ. Yeah, solve the problem by promoting people working, people building, people creating, instead of taxing the few that are doing something.
And I wanted to say something that you mentioned just earlier, because you said that they're going to put in price controls, and they're talking about price controls and subsidies. These are the two things that have economic laws to them. Anything that you subsidize, you'll get more of. And anything that you put a price control on, you'll create an artificial scarcity of. Like, this is just something that's an economic law. Like, you can't escape it.
It's just looking at the supply and demand equation and what pushes on the supply side and what pushes on the demand side. And when you put, when you think of a subsidy or price control, they're acting on one of those two. They're acting on one side or the other of that equation.
Exactly. So subsidizing things like poverty, you're going to get more of it. It's an interesting concept to even think of. But welfare, when you have welfare, or say you've got the UBI, or you get any of these new projects, you're subsidizing poverty. You're giving money to people who are impoverished. You're just going to get more of it. You're going to get more poverty when you introduce these ideas. This is an economic law. that happens. Now, when you put price controls on things, you just create shortages of those things because you're artificially bidding the price up. There's not enough demand for it, and the people who try to supply these things, they're not making a profit on it. So why would they supply it? If
and actually, now you're reminding me of other measures. I did read that damn economic update. Now you're reminding me, and now you're scaring me again. There was in there a mortgage charter. They're proposing a mortgage charter, and the mortgage charter again is even further interference in how banks do business. They're basically gonna force banks to be lenient instead of being strict. It's
we saw, when we saw this in the lead up to the 2008 crash in the United States, where they came in. Yep. They came in with two financial institutions that basically backed up all the bad mortgages. And what they did on the legislative side was they came in and they said, well, you can't discriminate against certain things. Like what? Well, you're not allowed to ask how much money the person makes. Things like this. It really got that ridiculous. It's really bad, and we're getting to that point here in Canada. Like you pinch yourself and you go, no, we couldn't make the same mistakes that they made only not even a decade ago. We're doing it.
Well, actually, you remind me. I remember seeing an interview. It was a senior manager at one of the banks, whether it was RBC or something like that. And when asked by the interviewer, like, what's the one measure you'd like to be able to do that would help, in this whole mortgage crisis, and he said exactly that. I'd like to be able to verify somebody's income. And I was like, wow, I thought you could. And apparently you can't. Like you can ask, but there's no legal way for him to verify other than taking the borrower's word.
That's insane.
It's completely insane, and now, and then this charter is going to make things easier. I mean, again, if you read the charter, there's some ridiculous statement in there. Like they're proposing a law. This is how stupid the Liberals are. They're proposing a law that will force the banks to notify you 6 months before your mortgage is up. I'm like, holy shit, man. Are they going to call me now and tell me that, my garbage has to go out on Wednesdays? Are they going to call me and tell me my driver's license is about to expire? Are they going to like literally that's your solution? Oh my God, that's your solution. The bank's going to call you. Yeah, God. And I think we talked about this last week and I questioned it. Somebody said that in theory, by doing what they're going to do, here's the other thing they're going to do. A bank almost, when you're about to default and you renew, without defaulting, when you renew, you can't just renew automatically. You currently go through the same process and you have to show that you're solvent and that you are, capable of borrowing. They're going to make the banks forego that step. So they know that there's about 50% of the mortgages that are coming up would not pass the stress test. So they're going to tell the banks, you can't force a new somebody who's renewing to undergo the stress test, which is like ridiculous, right? So they're gonna hold people in these mortgages, and they're gonna make it so the financial institutions can't deny them. You're automatically renewed, basically, and then behind the scenes, the banks have already said, well, then we'll have to extend the mortgages, and the government of Canada is saying, yeah, that's okay.
Amortization rates even further. Not up front. So up front is still 25 years, but behind the scenes, the bank will be allowed to amortize you further and further. And then somebody said, I questioned this, but I looked into it. Literally, there are people already that have 50, 60, 7-year mortgages because the interest rates went up so dramatically in some instances. And then they had these weird, fixed rate or fixed monthly payment schemes. And so the bank had no choice. They were on the back end just extending because they weren't paying enough to even cover the interest payments, never mind the principal. So now people we're going to have Canadians are going to have like 67-year mortgages. It's insane. So we talked about this last week, actually, after we stopped recording. We talked about this, and we were talking about...
Maybe that's where I thought of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because we were talking about the fact that what needs to happen is the crash. What needs to happen for this economy to turn around is for that housing market to tank. But the problem with that is there's so many people that are over leveraged. They owe a ton of money on these homes, and if they lose equity, if they go negative in their equity, and the interest rates stay up, that they're done. They can't afford to. Nobody's going to pay a big loan when the property of the value of their property's gone down. But the problem here is there's no moving on in Canada until these inflated prices of houses come down to a realistic
and I remember when you and I first talked about this last week, I was feeling a little uncomfortable, but in the end, yes, I agree. I mean, the analogy is, you got your foot, you just had a crushing injury and you have gangrene in your foot. I got to cut off your foot, man. Because if I don't cut off your foot, then I'm going to cut off your leg. I'm going to cut off and then you're going to die of poisoning. So I have to do something dramatic. Nobody wants to lose their foot. And I agree. Nobody wants to lose their house. But the reality in this country right now is that I don't know what number it is. Maybe it's 10% of people who own houses are shouldn't be owning a house. They're getting themselves in deeper and deeper trouble. They should be renting or doing something else, but it's unfortunate. Yes, we need to. Yeah, it sucks. It really sucks. But if we don't do something, we're all going to suffer for it.
Well, this is the nature of a malinvestment. And this is an economic principle that when in a bubble economy, this is when people malinvest. They'll invest into the wrong things, especially when you have, a central bank dictating what the interest rates are and then fostering the bubble. This is something that doesn't naturally happen in economies with sound money, that kind of thing, because the interest rates they fluctuate based on market forces. No, this is the interest rates are based on what liquidity they want to pump into the economy, and it forced a lot of people into real estate when this either you do that or you lose your money through inflation. That's essentially it. You lose all your savings into that. So it forced a lot of people into malinvest. But the only cure for the inflation caused by the malinvestment is for the people who malinvested to lose everything that they got during the bubble. That's really the unfortunate part.
It is the unfortunate part, and again, everything I look at, I don't see any good news in the near future. I mean, even this week, there was a few people celebrated the inflation number coming down from 3.8 to 3.1, and I looked at that. I questioned it. It's valid, but it's just the way the math is. But I did a model and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. We're not out of the woods, man. There's nothing. There's nothing concrete happening to lower inflation. There's no measure in place to lower inflation other than the bank increasing their interest rate, and they're not doing it fast enough. So there's nothing happening to counter those forces right now.
Well,
this is going to be a great segue. We're going to end up. Okay, go ahead. Before I jump into
my thought on that is that the government at the moment is actually working against the Bank of Canada. The Bank of Canada is raising the interest rates in order to get the malinvestment out of the economy. And as long as the Bank of Canada, or as long as the government of Canada is doing everything that they can to make sure that people who are malinvested get to keep their homes and stay in those homes and keep those prices high and maintain the market height that it's at, the market won't ever correct, and we're just going to be in stagflation for the entire time.
The governor of the Bank of Canada, Tiff Macklem, looks sick when he's talking now. You can tell he's talking, and you can tell he's trying to stick with the narrative and justify what he's doing, find ways to justify what he's doing. He can't. He wants to raise interest rates further. He's like you and I. He's like you. He's really like you. He knows that you gotta cool this off quickly. It's going to hurt a lot of people. He knows that. He's pragmatic about it, but then he's got pressure from the Liberals and others to not do what he needs to do. And you can see it in his body language. And in fact, I thought Trudeau would quit. I wouldn't be surprised if Macklem in the next few months decides to resign, because he's the one who's gonna look evil if he doesn't do something soon. And
he's damned if he does. He's damned if he doesn't.
He's damned if he doesn't. Yeah. So should he stick around for his job, or should he accept should he replace Mark Carney as governor of the Bank of England when Mark Carney comes over here to run for the Liberal Party of Canada? Which now gives us the ultimate segue. If we don't fix all this shit, we'll end up like Argentina, and we'll have 120% interest or inflation. And what did Argentina just do because they got fed up with all their inflation? They elected an ultra libertarian. Way to go, Argentina! I'm proud of you guys.
I'm pretty happy about it, actually.
Yeah.
To listen to him get on stage and talk the way he does. I mean, he's a firebrand, obviously. He's like,
well, he's a soccer player. He's an economist. He's God, yeah, I think he might be a rock star and a guitar player. He sure looks like a rock star with his funky hair or whatever.
That's right.
Did you see the video where he's standing in front of like? There's a video where he's standing in front of like a board that has like all the ministries, like the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Ministry of Intergovernmental Affairs and the Ministry of Women's Rights or whatever. And he's like, this ministry gone. Ministry gone. He's flipping them off in the air, and he's like, literally, I am going to reform this government. I described him as the love child of Donald Trump and Danielle Smith. Like he's
well, here's I'm not gonna play the video, but this is him talking with Tucker Carlson, and of course his name is sorry, where is it here?
Javier Milei.
Is it Javier? Okay, I was going to say Javier, but Javier Milei,
like Javier, like Jesus, Javier.
and he is very much against socialism, and I'm a big fan of it because he's unabashed about it, and he's very straight to the point, calling them like shit libs and stuff like that on television, right? Like saying people like it's a terrible ideology. You can't give them an inch because they'll take everything. And that's exactly what we're all going through. Argentina went through this, and I have a friend that I work with.
Venezuela, Argentina,
all over South America. But I have a friend who's from Chile, and that's a neighboring country, and he told me that he's been following this guy for some years now because he's been outspoken on the media, and he caught wind of him before he got really popular, but then he went from just talking smack to becoming the president in just a few years. He's actually something quite noteworthy, and I think people should pay attention to this because he's made the statement that we're winning the culture war. We're winning the culture war when it comes to our ideas. The left is the old guard. The left, especially in the Western world, the left is the old rockers. The old story was, the tropes were the old religious guy that's holding you down, like Footloose and Dirty Dancing and all these old movies. It's flipped. The left are now those people. The left are there, at schools telling people you need to be tolerant with the flag, but you can't do this and you can't do that. Kids are rejecting it. They don't care about lefty issues. They don't care about leftism. They know that all of these promises are just promises, empty promises, and they're just going to bring poverty because we're looking at it, right? And people are starting to wise up to this, and it's great. It's great. It's an opportunity for everybody to look at Xavier and what he's doing in Argentina and see this as like a real awakening moment. Now, it wasn't too long ago. We all saw the clip of Klaus Schwab talking about how he penetrates the cabinets. In that clip, who does he compare who he's penetrated? He's penetrated Argentina and Canada. He talks about specifically those two countries.
And New Zealand, I think he talks a little bit about. Speaking of Klaus Schwab, so as soon as Javier won and people started celebrating Javier, there was this small little group that said, "Oh, he's a World Economic Forum groupie kind of thing," and then they were putting out pictures of Javier. Yes, Javier did go to the World Economic Forum in 2014, and he did speak, but he was on a panel and he was bringing up a dissenting voice on the panel. But don't believe everything you see, folks. I mean, that's the video. That's the video. Ministry. God. Ministry of Public Works.
See you later.
You probably could keep that one. No, actually, you don't. Not federally. We don't need Public Works federally. Science and technology, gone.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Just talking
he's
about
not
what
a
all
World
these
Economic
bureaucracies.
Forum guy.
He's not. He's not.
No.
But the World Economic Forum, if you've ever been there, you get a profile made of you. Famously, Maxime Bernier got a profile of himself put on the World Economic Forum, and obviously now denounces it.
Well, I made one of myself. I put one on the internet. I made one that looked like me, and I put one on the internet. And I was discouraged yesterday because some people said I knew it, and they were being serious. Like they weren't being facetious. Like there's people who said I knew it. Marty's is not really a libertarian. He is I was like, come on, folks. You know me. I'm as libertarian as they get. But I would go to the WEF, right? I mean, if I got elected prime minister, I might send somebody there because, the old know thy enemy. I mean, you need to go and listen, so it's like when Pierre says he'll never allow any of his MPs to go there. That's not the right approach, Pierre. You could send a guy or two to go see what's going on and listen. That's all.
It's called pandering, though. That's what that is. It really is. One thing that caught me off guard, though, was when listening to the translations of Xavier and what he was talking about. The subtitles say libertarian every time he says that he's libertarian, but in Spanish it's a liberalismo, I think it is, and it's a liberal. So just liberals. In the Latin world, they actually still call people who believe in the principles of liberalism, like classical liberalism, they call that liberals. They don't even jump to the libertarian term because it was never stolen from them in the first place.
Was never stolen? Because I was going to say, is it because it doesn't exist? But no, it does exist.
No, the socialists just call themselves socialists in the Latin world.
Yeah. Well, even I had a difficult time at first when I first heard the term libertarian versus liberal, and it's confused by a lot of people, but
well, it was usurped. A bunch of socialists call themselves liberals, and then that's what ended up happening.
Yep. All right.
That's it. That's one more thing. I wanted to get your opinion on this before we go. I did a video about it last night, and this is what's being deemed the attack on the Rainbow Bridge. Now,
that's fresh. That's happening right now.
We saw that. We all saw the clips. This is the clip that came out, and this is of the actual event happening. And if you missed that, real quick, at the top
for your viewers, this is the customs on the Canadian side or the American side?
This is the U.S. side.
U.S. side. Okay, customs on the U.S. side. Rainbow Bridge, largest customs.
That car just comes barreling through. Smokes. So full tilt. He was going. Eyewitnesses said he was going about 100 miles an hour.
So it's hard to see. The car's in the background. He's hitting a barricade. He's flying through. So am I to assume that those booths extend like quite a ways to the, let's say, right of the screen, and the car barreled into one of those booths?
Yeah. So the booths are staggered. And they go along the way. So it did bash into one of the booths. There's the fire that was videotaped there, and then also the aftermath of the booth. Now people are labeling this an attack. If this was an attack, it's probably one of the worst attacks ever. The only people that were claimed in this one were the driver and the passenger. So there's two people involved in this.
I would check. Maybe they were friends with Hillary Clinton. That's what I would check.
So unfortunately,
those are the kinds of deaths that friends of Hillary Clinton suffer. Accidentally they get struck by a car, or they're in a plane that mysteriously disappears, or driving through a border crossing.
Yeah, self-inflicted multiple gunshot wounds. All kinds of things happen there. No.
The guy, the border agent, nobody in that building, I hope. Like, what a weird.
From the reports,
we don't know yet. We don't know.
Well, from the reports, there was no casualty on the border side, so that's the thing. Now, a lot of people have jumped to the conclusion, even the news, social media accounts, this was an attack, confirmed, all of this stuff. There is no confirmation here. This is what we know so far. It's not been a confirmation. It's been an awful traffic accident from what it looks like, and unfortunate because sometimes these things can happen. An automobile can malfunction, go full throttle. And then what do you do? What do you do at that point? A lot of people are concerned about that with electric cars. Because how do you turn them off? I know, like if you have a gas engine, just turn it off, pull the key out.
Well, there was a famous accident in the U.S. I think it was a bus many years ago where the bus driver was drinking a can of Coke or something like that, and the can of Coke fell down, rolled under the pedal, and then jammed the bus at full speed, and then major crash. So yeah, weird things. Maybe that's what led to the movie. What was the movie with the bus where they couldn't slow down the bus?
Speed. Yeah, that was
Speed.
Yeah.
With Keanu Reeves, a great Canadian.
Yeah, and Dennis Hopper.
Awesome.
I think he was the bad guy in that one.
Perhaps
he was always a good bad guy.
Anyway,
but
that's a great day. Yeah,
that's the news on that one. I don't think it was a terror thing. I think that's the news and people trying to get clicks, and that was really my take on it. I'll be surprised if I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, and it's disappointing that some people that I thought of as pretty good journalists went real full tilt with the terrorist story, but that's the world we live in. I mean, clickbait and getting sensationalism, and once in a while I'll forgive it as the fog of war because you don't know everything, but this one is not the fog of war. This is it's happening around us. You can wait a few days or a few hours and get the real story instead of just going with the sensationalism. So yeah. I when I first saw it, it looked like an accident to me because I saw the flame, and when I saw the first flame, I saw some, the telltale signs of spilled gasoline, how a flame sort of spreads around. So to me, it just looked like a car accident at the wrong place. It didn't, definitely not a bomb. I mean, bombs, when things go boom, people tend to notice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, Marty, where can people find you?
Marty Up North on Twitter and Marty Up North on Facebook.
All right. Well, make
YouTube.
sure on YouTube.
Jeez, did I say Facebook?
Yeah, you did.
Oh my God,
you did.
I just said Facebook. No, on YouTube.
I don't use Facebook, so
don't
look for me
Facebook
there
either. Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for joining me again for this one more week. We'll be back again next week and do it again.
Get better, man. I see you still got that little cough, but
it's killing me.
Yeah, drink that IPA. I'm telling you, IPA. All right, Clyde. Cheers.